Welcome to the UFO Woman Show. I'm your host, Melisa Kennedy, where everything here is uncensored. Yes, that means right here on WeBeam TV, we come to you live, so you never know what we're going to say because we talk about it all here. And with that said, I have to tell you that there's something in the news lately that I have to touch on right before we get to today's topic, which is sacred geometry. But I have to talk about an article that I have read in the New York Times, and the title is, "Do We Believe in UFOs?" That's the wrong question. Well, it got me to thinking about what is it that we believe in. And I've had a lot of people ask me, Melisa, why or what do you believe? Do you believe in UFOs? Why do you believe in UFOs? So this article in the New York Times here this week had me really stop and think about it. What does it mean when you believe in something? Well, the word believe has a faith-based connotation to it. And when you use the word believe in a sentence, and I'm going to give you a few examples to ponder. When you ask someone, do you believe in Santa Claus? Well, you're taking a leap of faith that you believe in something that you can't see or that you don't have actual proof. You believe or you hope that it exists. Do you believe in the Easter Bunny? Well, that's another faith kind of connotation to it. So now let's take the word believe and put it in a separate sentence in something that we know exists. For example, do you believe in the moon? Do you believe in the planets? Do you believe in the stars? It kind of doesn't make sense, does it? So when someone asks me, Melisa, do you believe in UFOs? My response is, no, I know there are UFOs. And with that said, I think we can start the show, guys, because I wanted to make a point that the word believe really doesn't exist or shouldn't exist in the vocabulary of UFOs' existence. We know that they exist. So, Kevin and Edgar, would you like to add anything to my little opening soapbox here?
I think that's a great introduction. And I hadn't thought about it that way because I don't believe in UFOs. I know UFOs exist because I've seen them all my life. I know the ETs exist because I've had communication with some of them.
But you don't say, I believe in aliens, I believe in extraterrestrials.
I know that they're there.
Right.
I am part of their extended family. I've seen the UFOs since I've been a child. They continue to show themselves today, now show themselves to my wife. So I know they are here. My wife took a photograph, which we showed on the show a couple of weeks ago, I believe.
Right.
So yes, I know they're here. I know the ETs are here. I've had the ETs materialize in my bathroom when I was 8.
Yeah.
I've had the ETs materialize in my bedroom a few years ago to ask me to write the books and talk about my experiences. Right. So I know they are real because I've seen them, I've interacted with them.
It's the word believe. That's I think what the problem is here, guys, is the word believe. Because believe has almost a negative connotation to it because it's a hopeful word. We have faith that it believes, that it exists. We have faith or we believe that something exists. And I think that's kind of where the narrative needs to change when we're talking about UFOs, extraterrestrials, intergalactic existence. We know they exist. So if we just simply change that word from belief to know, just like we say, we know the moon is there, we know the sun is there, we know the stars are there, we never say, Edgar, do you believe in the moon? Nobody says that, right? It's weird.
It doesn't exist in our regular vocabulary. Only when it comes to questioning things.
Right.
Which brings up a point that when I had my encounter, there was no doubt what I was looking at. When the airline pilots that don't report seeing things and you talk to them privately off the record, they know what they saw.
They don't say they believe.
They don't say they believe.
They-
They say, I know what I saw.
Right.
And what I saw was not anything that could have been created on this planet.
And they touched on that in the article, actually, in this week's article. And I love that, the Pentagon has actually come out and said, yes, that these UFOs are not of this world. They are not made by our current human technology. And then they go on to say that, but they're not admitting that they're made by aliens. Well, those of you that watch the show, I don't like the word aliens. I really like to use the word extraterrestrial or intergalactics. So when they say something like that, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are made by aliens. So who are they made by then if they're not made by anybody on planet Earth? I mean, that's kind of a weird thing to say. I mean, if it's not made by us, humans, then it has to, by default, be made by something or someone not of this planet, hence the word alien, extraterrestrial, or intergalactic. But now, I know Edgar is probably going to interject his opinion on a theory that they could be interpreting that to be, and that is that the UFOs that do exist that we're seeing are made by
Future humans or humanoids that have been taken from the pure human aspect and made into machine by injecting nanotechnology, turning them into cyborgs.
Yeah,
they're actually time travelers from 200 years into the future or 300 years into the future back to present day to give us a warning.
so kind of takes us back to that whole Matrix thing, doesn't it, guys? Time and space doesn't exist.
That's
I
correct.
like Edgar's analogy there with the ETs from the future. I hadn't really thought about that, but because my ETs are present in this time and dimension at this moment with me, as it were, and with many others. So that's a different concept. I'll have to digest that, Edgar, and talk about it later. So perhaps we can.
We're just stirring the
give us
pot
some
here,
more
guys.
information. My ETs are real. The UFOs are real.
They
I
are
hadn't
real.
thought about it. I will have to ask them. I will ask them because I know they are interdimensional. They're able to change from dimensions, but we've discussed that before. That's only vibrational frequency.
That's all
So
it is.
I'll have to discuss with them about time now and about these android types that you say and see what they come. I know we have our own robots, don't we? I saw one
Right.
yesterday.
Drones
The
and
robot
everything.
was doing flips, climbing upstairs, running
Yeah.
about,
Right.
jumping on the floor. And so we've got those type of robots now. Put
Right.
some artificial intelligence in one of those robots. Do we have what Edgar's talking about? Maybe.
Well, what about in another 100, 200 years?
Exactly.
And then they time travel back.
Well, Bicentennial Man was a very good example that Robin Williams played in that movie. One of the best roles he ever played, where he started out as a android/robot and wound up becoming, was he human or was he machine? And that was the quandary at the end of the movie. And he crossed over as a human more than he did as a machine at the very end of the movie, for those of you that hadn't watched it.
Oh boy, we're really going down the rabbit hole now, aren't we? Well, I had to start the show like that because that is a current event, something that's currently in the news. I had to talk about it because when I read it, I had to think to myself, when I've been asked, do you believe in UFOs? Well, of course I've always said yes, because I do. But then when you really stop, the school teacher in me comes out, I can't help it. When I stop and analyze that sentence and what the true meaning is, believe is the wrong word. And I think that's where, the community, the UFO community has suffered greatly because we keep putting those type of word connotations in there like believe, so that there's always that element of doubt.
Should we ask the question then, do you know that the ETs are currently engaging our planet? Do you know that the ETs are here using different vehicles?
Yeah,
so
that's
then
good.
that would open up another answer because you're asking a more direct question.
Yes.
Now the answer will be yes or no, or I think so, but it opens up another thought process in relation to the ETs, the UFOs, and the whole phenomenon.
I agree with you, Kevin. So no more do you believe in UFOs? Let's not ask that question
No.
anymore. We'll just put that to rest now. So with that said, let's get started with today's episode. I just had to lead in with that. Today's episode is about sacred geometry, and I've pulled up some video, and I have some pictures and stuff that I want to show here at the beginning, and then we're going to dive into sacred geometry and where it fits in our universe. So let's pull up some pictures and video here. We've got Stonehenge. We've got a couple other things that I've pulled up for us to look at. But basically what I want to say is within the 7 laws that govern the formation of all things, and it's stuff we've talked about here on the show, everything from consciousness to matter, we're going to find sacred geometry in it. We've touched on this, in previous episodes of the UFO Woman show, but we're going to find that these geometric patterns are even in nature, such as the seeds, the fruit, the tree of life, and they're all going to pertain to the division of matter and energy. Well, with the division of cells to the formation of all the galaxies we've talked about, we're going to find that these repeated shapes have overlapping spheres. So today what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to tie together all of these things, and it's going to also include planetary sacred geometry, crop circles, UFOs, portals, and fluid dynamics to give us a detailed picture of how all of these are interrelated. So, with that said, we're seeing some plants, some seeds. I did some close-ups of some seeds there. We're going to find sacred geometry. There's the tree of life. That's another really nice symbol in nature that we see. And we also have the planets, which also have sacred geometry in them as well. So let's dive into this, guys, because I think it has some relevance to bringing our previous conversations to a head in the form of geometry. Certainly wish I paid more attention to geometry back when I was in school. But Edgar, you're definitely going to take the lead some on this because this is your thing. You've read about it, you've studied it, so I'm going to let you take the lead.
Well, sacred geometry was used a lot by the Masons, the Rosicrucians, and the great philosophers talked about the geometry of nature, such as the honeybee, and the way they construct their beehives and their honeycombs. If you look at plants has a sacred geometry. What is a geodesic dome? That's a very simple triangular structure, but it's extremely strong and lightweight. And so sacred geometry has been used by the ancients for millennia. And if you look at the Earth's natural magnetic energy fields and what we call the energy grid, it has a sacred geometry in it as well.
What is that, actually? When you talk about the energy grid of Earth, for our audience that doesn't know maybe what that is, can you explain that just a little bit more, Edgar?
The ley lines are magnetic. And just like you take a bar magnet and take iron filings, spread them over glass that's sitting on top of a magnet so as not to contaminate the magnet, you actually can see the lines of the field lines of that magnet in the iron filings on the glass. The Earth is no different. We have an inner core that they say is solid with from the center of the core, then you have your liquid magma, and then you have your mantle and your crust. Well, that develops a magnetic field because it's rotating. It's iron, it rotates. Anytime you rotate a mass of metal, you can develop a light magnetic field. For its size, the Earth has the largest magnetosphere, but notice I said for its size. Jupiter is much, much larger than Earth, and it has a massive magnetic field, the same as the nearest star to Earth, which we call the sun. It has a massive magnetic field. So these magnetic fields interlace with one another throughout the solar system.
Okay, so then that's how, the whole planetary orbit and gosh, well, everything that we've talked about really in the last few weeks, that's kind of going to support what you just said. I mean, that's validation there. And in terms of what we find here on Earth, Kevin, you were born and raised in the UK, which is where Stonehenge is. Did you ever go to Stonehenge?
I didn't know it's one place I never visited. I should have done
You
now.
did it?
It's too far to go now.
Well, okay.
Maybe one day.
Hindsight's 2020,
Yeah, it is,
right?
isn't it? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, obviously you know about Stonehenge.
Yes.
So Stonehenge, it uses geometry. Of course, it's all falling down, but it does use geometry, and there's so many different schools of thought on what the purpose of Stonehenge was. Did it have some sort of a calendar connotation to it? Did it have some sort of a religious connotation to it? I mean, there's so many different theories out there. Just pick one to go with because there's a lot out there. But there's one thing that I find really interesting about Stonehenge, and that is when you look at an aerial view of Stonehenge, you actually see these electronic or magnetic rings around it in the grass. And Edgar, I'm gonna defer to you because you're way better at explaining this than I am. But am I right when I say there's almost like rings around Stonehenge in the grass?
If you look at an aerial view of Stonehenge with the grass has an actual pattern as to how it's growing because of the magnetic fields. Now, Stonehenge is sitting on what we call an energy node. That's where two ley lines cross. And if you look at all the lines in England of their henges, they run on a specific ley line that extends over into Europe and on around the world. And that's where a majority of these henges were built, was right on a massive primary ley line. You have primary ley lines, you got secondary ley lines, but the ancients knew how to find the primary ley lines. Plus, they used a different kind of stone. The stone was quarried some 16 miles away that had magnetic properties in it as well as quartz properties.
Oh, okay.
And it was because of their properties they were able to set the north in a certain way and the south of a certain way of each stone to develop an electromagnetic field using the Earth's natural energy field. So is Stonehenge a possible portal? The most definitely is yes, because in 1971 they had a group of
well, they were hippies.
Students, whatever they were, in the center of the henge. A massive electrical storm came up, and they could hear the kids yelling, and then they all disappeared. And they still have not been able to solve that to this day.
Yeah, where did they go? I'm just saying, where did they go unless it wasn't through a portal? Right, Kevin?
Well, I haven't heard of that before.
You haven't?
Edgar knows so much information, it just astounds me.
He's like an encyclopedia.
That's an amazing thing. And what you say does make sense. I'm sure there are portals. And we've already discussed energy.
Yeah.
We're all energy anyway.
Everything is energy, guys.
Yes,
yeah.
and that would give a good explanation. I'll have to do some research myself on that, Edgar, because I'm fascinated that a group of hippies
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so that
was back in the 70s.
I did pick up on something else. We were talking about the sacred geometry in relation to you. I was thinking about bees and the honeycomb, and you mentioned it. And the reason why I was thinking about that was because when I was shown the grid that surrounds the Earth, it's hexagonal in shapes, all linked together like a honeycomb from the bees. So that's a natural formation, I suspect. Or it's man-made, or extraterrestrial made in relation to keeping our spiritual side tied here on the planet. But it's funny that the similarity between the honeycomb bees, sacred geometry, and restricting us from leaving our physical and keeping us on a prison level, on a spiritual level. Does that
Oh
make
boy,
sense
we
to
talked
you?
about that, yeah.
Yes.
It's that whole prison planet philosophy or
Yes, yes.
theory.
But
So, okay. Oh, gosh. Okay, here we go. Wow. Well, that just opens up another whole can of worms, doesn't it?
it's his fault. See?
It's his. It's Edgar's fault. Blame Edgar
Yeah,
when all
blame
else
me.
fails. All right. Well, since we're going there with it, I have to ask the next question: who put what you're calling the honeycomb? You think that was extraterrestrial that did that?
I believe so, yes. I've come to that understanding now, and the reason I think I've mentioned before, I believe now that we were seeded here, different races were seeded here, and then there might have been some galactic wars possibly.
Oh, sure.
I know this is way
well, the
out there.
Indian culture even talks about
It
that.
does, yes, it
The
does.
wars in the sky, we talked about that last week on the episode.
So I suspect that some higher conscious beings, ETs, intergalactics, whatever name you want to put on them, they put that grid there, and they show me that grid on purpose, both sides of the grid, because it has a significance to who we are spiritually.
Okay, so when you had that experience, Kevin, and you saw this grid, can you tell the audience kind of a little bit more what you're talking about?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm able to separate my consciousness from my physical. I'm able to travel outside of my body, physical body, as pure conscious energy. Now, I can do this with the ETs, because they're able to do that. And on this particular occasion, I was traveling with Ort, who's one of my ET guides, and he showed me the grid. We went out past the Earth, we looked from the outside, and we could see the grid around the Earth. And
You
then
could actually see a grid.
we could see a grid, yes. And then we moved to the inside of the grid and could see the inside of the grid looking outwards, as it were. So,
Wow.
but he obviously, they don't always give me direct information. They give me experiences, and those experiences get linked together, and that's how they educate me.
Be nice if they just gave you a book.
It would, wouldn't it? I'll sit me down in the classroom.
You know, yeah. Here, Kevin.
But
Here's
they
the
just
book
give me
about
these
everything.
these experiences, and then what I'm finding now, because I'm speaking to other experiences, little pieces of the jigsaw are all fitting together. I spoke to a lady the other day from the UK with another group of experiences, and she confirmed a lot of the information that I've been given by my ETs, and she'd been given the similar information.
Really?
So it just like a jigsaw fitting together. So that's how they're educating us as experiences.
Oh my gosh, I love that, and how all of this intertwines with everything we've talked about on the show, because we know all things are energy. Everything is just about energy and frequency. That's all there is, guys. They like to try to make it sound like it's way more than what it is. It's not. Real simple. Energy. That's all it is. This chair's energy, this shirt's energy, the TV's energy, and it's all energy. And you kind of look at it that way, it kind of simplifies everything. It just kind of makes everything seem, well, I don't know, a little less stressful in a way. But with that said, okay, we've got the honeycomb thing, we've got the grid around the Earth, we have the solar system. What about these, well, you talked about ley lines, we talked about the Stonehenge. I have to now go into crop circles. So crop circles, and that's been in the news, and yes, there's been some hoax, and obviously there's been a lot of that. But let's talk about crop circles for a minute, because that's a big part of the UFO community, and crop circles, they're fascinating. I mean, I've seen some just beautiful patterns. What do you think is happening there? Edgar, I got to go to you on this, because crop circles, that's clearly a manipulation of energy. Clearly things are being done there that manipulates the grain or wheat, whatever it is that they're making the crop circle in. What's happening there, Edgar, with crop circles?
Well, with the crop circles, the ones that are fake, you can tell by the way the grass has been broken, or the wheat, or whatever's in that field. But in a true crop circle that's done by other than worldly means, the joints in the grass or the plant is blown out, and they're laid in a specific pattern. The other thing too is, on some of the crop circle investigations, they've taken cell phones, and the cell phone be completely dead with no communication, but yet you have a piece of air around you in the center of that crop circle. If you look at a crop circle from above, you see the pattern, but if you look at it across there is a 3 to a 4 dimensional field that's generated, and these patterns are what I believe are giving us information that if we know how to read those patterns, we can tell what's going on and or what we need to do as a human species.
It's almost like an encrypted message.
Yes.
Okay. Ooh, that's fun. I remember, you guys remember when you were kids, how you'd get those little pens and they would reveal an invisible message. Remember those? That's kind of what it reminds me of. Okay, I'm sorry, I had to go there for just a second. But no, it's cool. It's like an encrypted message. But I don't think anybody's really understanding what it is they're trying to say, which shame on us because it's probably something important. I don't think they would waste their time just making pretty little circles everywhere. There's probably more significance to it. Have you ever had any of your encounters with your ET guides, Kevin, about any of that?
Not specific information from them,
Okay.
But I have been to a couple of lectures on crop circles out of interest from people that do know about the things, and they do say, yeah, that some of them are man-made, but there's a small percentage that aren't. And Edgar's correct in relation to the way the corn, will stick with corn, bends over, where they have the little nodes. That's where they explode a little bit and then they bend over there. But what they did find, some of our scientists who studied this, that the crop then yields a 25 to 28% larger yield if they're replanted. So it's expanding the amount of food we can get. So, and it also transcends down the line. So you take the corn from there, you plant the seeds, and then you'll get 25 to 28% more corn. But then those that you plant get 25 to 28% more corn. So I suspect that is probably now being utilised. Our scientists know that and understand that. And I only know that from being to these couple of lectures and watching a documentary. So the ETs themselves hasn't told me anything about that. But it's interesting that we as experiencers, we have a specific avenue area where they give us the information, and crop circles was not important to my development, as it were. So.
Right, but of course, being that you are from the UK, you have a lot of crop circles happening in UK. Why do you think that is? Is that something Edgar or Kevin, either one of you can answer? Do you guys think that has something to do with that 37th parallel, that whole energy node thing? I mean, what's the reasoning behind why the UK has them? Why don't we have them here in Florida? Wait a minute, we don't have any farmlands in Florida.
In Ohio.
Oh, we have them in Ohio. But that's it, isn't
Pennsylvania. No, they're all over. It's just a lot of times they're not noticed or publicized. But the reason UK has so many of them is because they have a major ley line that goes across the island, as well as they're using the ley lines as navigation.
What parallel is the UK on? It's not 37th, is it?
No, it's 52, or it's up around 52 to 55 degrees.
Do you know, Kevin, about what it is?
I have no idea. Only thing that
it's live, folks. So
I know that
bear with us.
That, as Edgar says, that whole area, there's a lot of activity.
Yeah, well, there's a ton of activity.
It's on a small island, is the UK.
I know, and that's why I'm like, why is it the hot spot?
Well, because of the ley lines, probably.
Ley lines
and the
energy. Geology.
They tap into the energy, probably use the energy to create the crop circle. I mean, I don't know, because I haven't been given any information on it, but clearly you're correct, and the crop circles go back to the Middle Ages.
Right.
And they used to think they were the corn devil.
Yeah. Well, if there's so many energy grids happening there, then of course the paranormal investigator in me has to ask the next question. Do you have a lot of paranormal activity there too?
Yes, as far as I'm aware, there is.
Okay,
Yes,
I would think so. I mean, it's all interrelated.
It is. It's all interrelated.
So, okay.
And they're all so close together as well. Right. But again, probably due to the ley lines and.
Right. Wow. So there's just a lot to the ley lines and this sacred geometry and the energy.
There's ley lines, and then you also have the geology and what kind of rocks and boulders, or whatever you want to call them, that's underneath the surface there. It's just like the Bermuda Triangle.
Right. Well, you mentioned that the stones that were used in Stonehenge We're 16 miles away? Is that what you said?
They were quoted
Okay.
16 miles away.
So, when we were all kids growing up and we were told that they like pushed and pulled these big boulders in their loincloths and they're like, heave ho, heave ho. Same thing with the pyramids. I think that's the dumbest thing ever. I don't understand why anybody would believe that. I never did as a kid. I always thought that was weird. I thought, well, my gosh, how in the world are they going to pull these big, huge boulders? And I know that there has been several here lately on some different programs and different things that have completely debunked that whole thing. And they can't even do it with the modern Caterpillar machines. So there's no way that the notion that we've all been misled to believe that these guys doing the heave-ho with the, with the ropes can move these huge boulders and then not only move them, but then have them stacked to where you can't even fit a piece of paper through them. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, and then they've got these perfect right angles and all this other stuff. I'm sorry, but the loincloth theory, that no. It just doesn't make any sense.
They had the technology to levitate the rocks by using resonance. This is where resonance harmonics comes in at.
And where did that technology come from, Kevin?
From the intergalactics, yes.
Boom, there
ETs,
we go.
The extraterrestrials. Yes.
Exactly.
And I would agree with Edgar entirely there, that we've already been told that the ETs, if they're going to remove someone from a house, they match that vibrational frequency of the wall and take them through the wall.
Right.
So they're not actually taking them through the wall, these large stones, they're just levitating them using the sound vibrational frequencies, and then they can just push them into place later.
Well, now, isn't that something that we actually have evidence of right here in Florida? Is there not a place down near Miami?
It's called Coral Castle, and it's on U.S. Route 1 down in
Is it Fort
Homestead.
Lauderdale? Oh, Homestead, okay. Yeah, and then that's another example of what we're talking about, using resonance, using sacred geometry, and all these other technologies that have basically been brushed under the carpet, and we've been misled into believing that it's other things, and it's not.
And they're trying to give us a simple explanation of rolling them on pieces of wood in loincloths, as you say.
Yeah.
When really the advanced technology answers all the questions, really. But then
totally.
if you accept the advanced technologies, then you've got to accept advanced cultures, advanced beings.
Bingo.
We don't need that because we're not educated to that level. They don't want us to be educated to that level.
Exactly, and hence the word believe is going to be out of our vocabulary, and we're going to replace that with we know UFOs and we know extraterrestrials exist, and we have lots of evidence to prove so.
Just going back to what Edgar said about the crop circles, I just remembered something then. I went to one lecture, and this guy discovered that under all the crop circles there were aquifers.
Yes.
And he suspected that they were using energy from the aquifers to create the crop circles.
And they even had some liquid metal and whatnot that they use. I know, like in the pyramids and whatnot, they even had evidence of gold, and I don't know, there's a couple other metals.
I know we touched on that last week with the design of an engine that I was downloaded that had mercury in it. And I think it's Chichen Itza where they've just discovered mercury under there in a new chamber. And then there's the big, the one in China where they've got all the armors and things. They've found a huge place there that's got this mercury, but it's in the place of water in a sculpture, and so they had mercury. I mean, I don't know where they get mercury from, but it's a metal. I know that, and I know it's liquid at room temperature. But where does mercury come from, Edgar? Do you know? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, Edgar, but we're
live, guys, so just bear with us.
Up in Canada, where a lot of the water comes out of Canada, when they started damming up the like the Columbia River, they started getting large deposits of natural mercury that was in the water, and because it wasn't flowing, things started getting poisoned by mercury. But mercury is an element, and it's the only metal that you can actually port. at
Oh,
room
wow.
temperature.
That's cool. Well, you mentioned about your download of the UFO drawing and all that we talked about last week. So if you haven't watched that episode, make sure you do because it's quite good. You have had another download
Yes.
since last week's episode.
Yes,
You want to share
I
that?
can do, yes. It was
Okay.
this week. I get downloads all the time. Sometimes there's long distances between, but I'd just woken up. I was about to get out of bed, and they gave me information. They said that they were very concerned about the pollution in our planet. They were particularly concerned about Fukushima and about the radioactive pollution. They were also concerned about the pollution that's now spreading across and throughout the Pacific all the way to the Californian coast, which is affecting all the life within the Pacific Ocean. They say that they have technologies that can help clean up this radiation, both at Fukushima and in the ocean. And they're prepared to share this information with our governments if our governments will receive their ambassadors. And that was a download I got this morning, not this morning, one morning this week before I got out of bed. So they have mentioned that in the past. And I know in Fukushima now the Japanese have built many new hospitals because they've got high incidences of throat cancer and thyroid cancer. So I know our ETs are eager to share their technologies to help us assist in our evolution, both within society and within ourselves as well. So it's really an open invitation, I suppose, to our government. To,
Right. Well, what I would like to see have happen is not going through the governments, but rather going through the people. Those of us that are awakened, those of us that are welcoming to the idea and are not threatened by the presence of extraterrestrials and intergalactics.
It's funny you should say that because I've asked them that question in the past, and they said that they've contacted our governments with a request to meet with them. There are a couple of interactions, but they're not prepared to do that. They've shown the governments that they are here, they understand that, and they know of the request. So what they did tell me, the disclosure will now come from the people, from the ground upwards. That's exactly what you said.
Which is what we're doing.
It's a while ago is that. I have it written down in some notes somewhere. But interesting that you touch on that topic, and they've already told me that. And we're seeing that now. There's so many different groups out there who are connecting with the ETs using the CE5 protocols, meditation, many different ways of contacting them. So it is growing, and contacting through spirituality, through meditation, as I've said. We'll leave the government behind. They're welcome to meet with the ambassadors of the ETs, but if they don't want to do that, then the disclosure will come through the people.
Right, which kind of leads me to a point that I really wasn't going to make today. I was going to save it for next week, but I think this is a good lead-in. It's going to take those of us that have boots on the ground to bring this forward. We can no longer leave it up to our governments and our leaders to bring forth this information. It has to come from people like us. And people like us are the ones that are going to put together organizations. Organizations such as UFO Hunters of America, a brand new nonprofit organization, unlike any other. We have an unprecedented, holistic approach that has not been done before because we are going to look at all the different aspects of our universe, the mysteries within, through UFO research, experiencer research, paranormal research, and universal consciousness research. And I am proud to say that the three of us, along with, 8 others, are going to make this happen. And we will talk more about this later, but I did just want to lead in a little bit, give a little bit of a tease. It's called UFO Hunters of America, and it is a brand new nonprofit organization that has never had an approach like this. And we are poised to take this to the next level. And certainly if you've been watching our show here lately, you guys know what we're all about, and we're about the whole entire universe, not just a little tiny bit, not just studying one part of it, but we are actually studying it all as an interdisciplinary approach, and answering the question, are we alone in the universe, and how do we fit in? And that really is a mission that we have as an organization to bring forth not only the research, but we are not going to hold that research to ourselves. We are actually going to make it public, and we are not going to share that information with organizations that don't believe in what we're doing. And we believe that this knowledge needs to be put forth to the public 100%. Right?
That's correct. Yeah.
No more.
There's way too much
Withholding evidence.
withholding evidence because of the good old boy syndrome or the good old girl syndrome, whatever it may be, mixed with government and religion. We got to get the actual facts out there, non-biased.
Right.
It's the biased stuff is what's hurting the planet. So
It is.
we have to make this as non-biased as possible. It's not my idea, nor your idea. It's what really truly is.
Right, right. And, you know, all three of us bring something different to the table, as well as the rest of our board of directors. And it's going to be fun. And we'll touch on it a lot more next week. I know I kind of dropped the bomb just a little bit. Just, you know, we're live, and as things come into my head, I just have to share it. And, you know, we touched on that subject just a second ago, and I thought, well, there's no better time than right now just to talk about it, because we had our first board meeting last night, although we had some technical glitches, which may or may not have been the fault of my doing. We'll just say it that way. There were some other forces at play, I think. But with that said, we did have our first board meeting last night, and so this is launched. This is up and going, and we're really excited about it. And so we'll talk more about it here on the show in future episodes. But let's get back. Let's wrap it up here in the end of the show. I want to wrap up why you guys think the sacred geometry is so important in understanding all of the universe's mysteries. Why is it so important that we understand this, and how can we use that knowledge to go forth in our expansion of knowledge and our ascension, if you will? Edgar, you want to take it first?
Well, sacred geometry is throughout the entire cosmos. And by understanding the sacred geometry, we can make life here on planet Earth a lot easier to live. We can give each other the support without having the greed and the politics and the other things involved, because nature has none of those agendas.
Well, and that's what I love about nature. I mean, just look at a seed, look at a flower, look at anything found in nature. It is gorgeous. But if you even look at it from a deeper standpoint, a lot of it actually has sacred geometry in it, doesn't it? I don't know if you guys remember, like back in science class, we take the little seeds, we dissect it, and there would be, you know, all different types of patterns and whatnot. And it really is beautiful when you stop and think about it. And there's really geometry all over the place. There's stuff whether we don't even think about that is geometry. I mean, the planets have geometry to them. A lot of the ancient, you know, landmarks and things like that, the pyramids, they all use geometry. What do you think?
Yeah, I think
Kevin?
there's a connection there. I'm not an expert on sacred geometry. I'm not an expert on anything really, but sacred geometry is, I think it's a link between the physical realm and the nature realm. All comes together. It's their rules, how they exist, as it were. But it moves beyond that to us, to our individual cells. It moves to the planets. It goes from the very minute things to the largest things. But it's all interconnected.
Right.
And that's why it has the name sacred, because it's probably divine driven or divine organized.
Oh, absolutely divine driven. And with that, I have a quote. Hopefully we can pull it up here from Tesla. Tesla had a quote. It says, he said, "If you only knew the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, then you would have a key to the universe." 3, 6, and 9. If you understood the magnificence of those, you would have the key to unlock the universe. And I mean, Tesla, my gosh, he was so, oh gosh, how can I say it?
Ahead of its time.
Unappreciated. Yeah, when he was alive, that's an understatement. 369. I've always liked those numbers. I don't know about you guys, but 3, I love 3. What's the significance, Edgar, of 3, 6, and 9?
Well, 3 and 9 are prime numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But you take, like 3 is, or 9 is a multiple of 3.
Right.
That's 3 times 3. And you have 2 times 3 is 6. And 3 times 3 is 9. And 3 stands by itself.
Wow. Yeah, well, look at a pyramid. Look at all the different shapes.
Were all constructed with the harmonics of the planet as well as circumference. If you take the entire surface area of the Great Pyramid of Giza, it's equivalent to the surface area of the entire planet.
Wow.
Circumference.
Right.
And it's all based on pi, 3.147.
Wasn't there a movie about that, Life of Pi?
I think there was. But don't
Yeah,
know.
it was, that was about.
Not the same thing. I didn't watch it. I don't
it's
know.
not the same thing, though.
Not the same thing?
Yeah,
Do you want to add anything to that?
staying on, well, I was just going to say, staying on the subject of sacred geometry, I mentioned earlier about how experiencers are given certain knowledge about certain aspects. I have a friend in Australia called Lauren Kurth. She's an experiencer. I met her once at Ray Hernandez's conference in Miami. And we started chatting, we became friends over Facebook, and we continue to communicate. But her expertise is sacred geometry.
Is it? Oh,
She
cool.
can talk to all the leading scientists about sacred geometry. We'll have to fly her over here when I was a guest from Australia. That would be good, wouldn't it? I'm sure she would love that.
Well, even well, I know, right? Oh my gosh. Well, even the human body has geometry in it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's you don't really think about it so much because we think of geometry as just like a math class we had to take in high school. It's really so much more than that. And as I'm diving more into my research with UFOs, paranormal, and things, I'm starting to see that it's everywhere. It's in everything. We just don't think about it.
Look for it.
Yeah, we don't acknowledge it. Well, you know, the UFOs have to use geometry in some regards, or else they wouldn't even fly, right?
Well, that's true. And also think about the egg. You can take an egg and you can put it into the little bottom and the top, and you can squeeze down on it and it won't break unless it's already cracked.
Yeah.
And so geometrically, they already knew all this.
Right.
And one other point, going back to England, 0 degrees longitude runs through Greenwich, England. That's where our atomic time clock is. That is the standard for all world time. And that is what we call GMT time. In the military, we call it Zulu time. And that was all from 0 degrees. How did they know how to lay out the planet in longitude and latitude unless they were looking at it from space?
Oh, gosh, what a point that is. Wow.
This is also sacred geometry.
Longitude and latitude. You're right, Edgar. How in the world would they have known that if they weren't looking at it from up in space?
Which brings another point. Are we the 3rd planet in, or are we the 6th planet in? It's how you approach the solar system.
And it's all a matter of perception, which we've talked about that on the show. Perceived reality. What is your perceived reality? Well, if you're an intergalactic coming in from another galaxy, we're not the 3rd rock from the sun. We are the 6th one in.
I find that interesting what Edgar's just said there. He always gets me thinking when he starts talking. If you look at it, as you said, from one point where the 3rd planet, coming in from that side, from the other planet, the side where the 6th planet, so it's 3, 6, 9. And how many planets do we have in our solar system?
Yes.
9.
Yes.
So we've got 3, 6, and 9 again.
Okay, light bulb just went off.
I've just got a light bulb.
Live on TV.
I love talking to Edgar.
Oh my gosh. Hey, great wrap up of that,
Yeah.
Kevin.
Yeah.
You get a star on your
Thank you
chart
very much.
today.
A gold star, I
Yes, a
hope.
gold
Thank
star. Yes, you do. All right, we just have a few minutes left, so let's real quickly talk about how this might relate to portals. Oh, I have to go there with that. Portals. How in the world does geometry affect portals?
The shape of an object or the layout of a site is going to directly affect the resonance of the specific point, which would be where two ley lines cross. That's an energy node. And it focuses it, much like we turn the dial of that old radio or that old TV to tune in. We have to tune the capacitance or the resonance of the planet, and at certain alignments of the planets and or even constellations, when the alignments are perfect, that's when you have that maximum energy and you can walk right through and disappear.
So if we had that knowledge, Edgar, could we create our own portal?
Yes.
Wow. Would we want to create our own portal? That is the question. I don't know. I think I have some experience with that, and so do you. So, yeah.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe.
Portals. Do we want to create them? Could we create them? Should we create them? What are your thoughts, Kevin?
Well, what are CERN doing? They're doing
Right.
out on the edge.
That's why I said, should we create them?
I don't know. It's again, it's technologies I'm sure we can develop. I know there are stories in Peru of these portals where people have been able to enter them and come out of them again.
Well, there's portals in Arizona. When I lived out in
Really?
Arizona and I was a school teacher on the Indian reservation, I'm here to tell you there were portals out there. Sedona has them. Gila
Right.
Bend has them. I mean,
Right.
there's quite a few places that have them.
So there are probably areas where you get this convergence of the ley lines, the energy, and that opens up the portal. So they're probably natural phenomena.
There are
possibly.
natural stargates.
Natural stargates.
That's a good.
So were they put here by extraterrestrials, or were they just a natural phenomenon?
Both, I suspect.
They're both.
Yeah.
Oh,
probably
I'm
both,
asking
yeah.
hard questions. We need our caffeine, don't we?
We do. Yeah.
When Melisa starts asking the hard questions, I think we're all like, gosh, we should have eaten a bigger breakfast.
Yeah.
Our brain power is not at its best, I think. But, well, okay, so portals, they could be created.
They could be created by intergalactic, and some of them were created by intergalactics, and the ones that are known, our governments have taken control of them and say they don't exist when they in fact do exist. Edgar Casey talked about that in some of his visions that he and they wrote down, and then they later on came out and they said, yeah, Edgar Casey was right.
Yeah, we've talked about him a lot on this show. We
that
like
was
him.
between 1932 and 1943.
Well, you talked about resonance, Edgar, and how that affects portals. Would water enhance the ability to create a portal? So water?
Yes, the water is because of the crystalline structure of water. Water has a unique crystalline structure, unlike any other substance. When most substances get cold, they sink. But when you take and literally freeze H2O, which we call water, it expands and floats.
Right. And you talked about crystallized.
And everything has a crystal, just like
Our 11.5-pound crystal sitting right here on our set in front of us. It helps bring some good energy in here while we do our show. And a lot of the ancient landmarks that we've talked about actually used quartz crystal, right? Hence the reason why I love crystals. You guys know how much I like collecting them. I have way too many crystals, but I like them. I like the energy from them. But obviously, they harness that energy so that, you could, in theory, create a portal.
Yes.
Wow. Be kind of neat if we created a portal right here at WeBeam TV studio. John's probably back there going, nope. Hey, it'd be good for ratings, wouldn't it?
We could beam out.
We could beam right out on set live. That would
Yeah,
be now.
that would be cool. wouldn't
that
it?
would be
But we
cool.
may never return.
Well, that's all right. As long as we're going to a good place.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you could talk to your ET
Yes,
guides
perhaps I
there,
could,
Orton
yeah.
D.
Yeah, they may well do.
Make that happen for us, Kevin. Maybe we could,
We
you
could all
know.
beam up like in Star Trek. We'll all be sat here,
Yes.
and we'll start going.
Yeah. Here we go. I want one of those cool little things on my shirt, though, from
Yeah,
Star
that would
Trek.
be- that would be
Well,
cool.
speaking of Orton D, I think at a future episode, we're going to probably have you channel, aren't we?
Yeah, we were thinking about it, so I'll have to ask them if they're okay with that. And I did one a few weeks ago. So yeah. Well,
How
I'll
long
think
do
about
you
that.
normally channel for?
Well, normally what we do, we'll have 12 questions,
Okay.
and then
So about half hour, maybe?
yeah, but it's about 40 minutes you'll live with
Okay.
it. Sometimes the answer to the questions might be yes or no, and sometimes a little bit longer. So it varies between 30 minutes and 40 minutes.
Okay, well, definitely want to be stay tuned for that, because at some future episode, maybe even next week, we don't know yet, we might do that. Well, that just about wraps it up here, guys. Another episode of UFO Woman Show. It seems like they go quicker and quicker each week. I don't know. Maybe it's the subject matter. Maybe it's because we're just so excited to share this information with everybody. But this has been a nice introduction into sacred geometry. I'm sure we're going to dive into it a little bit more in some future episodes. But, you know, it's a start. And a lot of our audience, this is all new information that we're getting out there. So hopefully we're taking it in a slow enough process that everybody can follow what we're saying, and they can do their own research. But anyway, I'm your host, Melisa Kennedy, and I'm so thankful that you've tuned in another episode of the UFO Woman Show. And until next week, I want you to keep looking up.